Hello and welcome to the SOFEA Sessions podcast. Today's shorthand episode is all about how effective collaboration can make real community change. We are joined by Didcot TRAIN CEO Ben Drabble and SOFEA's Didcot Community Manager Alice Piggott, both part of the Didcot Wellbeing Web, which is a new partnership in Didcot striving to improve young people's wellbeing. Didcot TRAIN are a charity that are working towards a society where young people feel empowered, supported and heard. If you want to find out more, I will pop the link in the description. Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, welcome both of you to the SOFEA Sessions podcast. It's nice. I don't think either of you have been on before, have you?
No.
Pleasure to be here.
Two new guests. So exciting. Amazing. Well, why don't we start by you guys introducing yourselves and then we'll get into it.
Brilliant. I'm Alice Piggott. I'm the Didcot Community Partnership Manager, and I also work for SOFEA, and I'm the chair of the Didcot Wellbeing Web.
And I'm Ben Drabble, and I'm the CEO of TRAIN Inspiring Young People. So we're a youth work charity working in Didcot and Wallingford.
Amazing. And hopefully everybody knows me because I'm the host of this podcast. Amazing. So I guess, probably a good place to start is just to talk about how the partnership between SOFEA and Didcot TRAIN began. Because we're working very closely now, so it's probably just useful to talk about where that all started.
Yeah, so I think it all starts with relationships a lot of the time, doesn't it? You know, my experience of partnerships over the years has been that you can create different structures to try and encourage networking and cross-working and collaborative working to happen, but actually it always comes down to kind of personal relationships and a little bit of synergy and getting in the same room and chatting over coffee and dreaming up ideas, and that's when you can actually start to kind of make things happen. And I think my experience, I've only been here for a year. I know the partnership preceded me, but actually the kind of relationships I've been able to develop with both of you, and that's created opportunities where then you're at the end of the phone if something's going on. If I've got an idea, we can discuss it, and stuff has kind of grown almost quite organically from there. There are kind of structures that underpin it, and I'm sure Alice will chat a bit about those as well, but for me those relationships are what's key in driving these things forward. Yeah,
I completely agree. What about you, Alice? What are your views on how it all began?
I think for me is very much that we have the same passion and the same drive for the community. We want to see young people thrive in every aspect of looking at their past, their present and their future, and actually why not work together? Why work in those silos when we can come together, put expertise, resources and relationships together, we can make a more sustainable impact for the people that we're serving in the community, and that's really exciting. And as Ben said, just building those relationships and being able to grow together as an organisation and see the fruits from that is really exciting.
There's often a lot of barriers in the way, and we sometimes wonder, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? Why don't more organisations work more in collaboration? They absolutely should, but the truth is there are quite a few barriers kind of in the way. Obviously funding's a massive one. Often, particularly small local charities, we kind of feel like we're sometimes competing for the same funding pots. Those funders talk about wanting to see us collaborate, but actually in the way those funds are administered, it doesn't necessarily
it's really difficult
encourage
also to do that.
And actually, with so many of the funders that we're relying on wanting, having a preference for small charities, it incentivises more little charities than it does in terms of larger ones, as well as just the normal stuff of kind of egos can get in the way, and then squabbling over who has to administer the relationship or do the admin behind it and stuff. So there are these barriers. So it's wonderful to have when you can break through those, when you can reach, and as Alice says, it's when you see the results of it and the impact and it compounding over time. That's when it's like, oh no, this is absolutely worth it.
And actually, I think that just highlights what you said earlier about the importance of having those relationships at the beginning, because actually, inevitably, there are going to be barriers in partnership, and actually, then when you get to those hurdles, you can sit together and just be like, right, how are we going to attack this together, rather than squabbling over it and how do we do this? So that's is a really good example of partnership, which is amazing. So you obviously alluded to the Didcot Wellbeing Web earlier, which is kind of one of the key strands that brought the two organisations together. So it'd be really good just to talk a little bit about what is the Didcot Wellbeing Web and where did that come from as well?
Yeah, so the Didcot Wellbeing Web is sort of a model of collaboration of working, drawing together organisations from statutory, from the charity sector and from the business sector as well, because actually we all have an investment into our wider community, so why not pull all of those three sectors together? It's quite a unique model in the sense of you have quite a lot of collaborations between charities, you have collaborations with statutory agencies, but putting all three of them together is quite a unique group and can actually make an even bigger impact. And as we've mentioned earlier, that partnership has been really great. We've been sitting around just discussing, we need help with this project, or we need help with this funding bid, but also it can be as little as we need a sofa. Yeah. We need somewhere to film for 2 minutes, and actually seeing those macro collaborations, but also those micro as well, and actually supporting each other on that relational level, which has been really exciting. The Didcot Wellbeing Web, I came in to sort of organise and sort of put a bit more of a framework into it, but actually the partners, because there's such a need and everyone has got that passion to see that impact, it's been amazing that I haven't actually had to do much, in the sense of everyone wants to come around that table and discuss and get involved and dive straight in, even if it's not their organisational sort of normal projects that they run. They would still want to get involved because they see the benefits and the need for the community, which is really exciting to see. And putting those different experts, I can put money in, no, I can I've got connections this way, or I've got expertise in that way, and actually we come together and we've got this really great working group that we're starting to see that we're able to deliver some projects that we're starting this year, which is really exciting to see.
Amazing. I'm really interested in what you guys think the need is for the Didcot Wellbeing Web. Obviously, like you say, it is quite a unique partnership with lots of different types of partners and stakeholders involved, but what is it that kind of draws everybody to that table, do you think, in the context of what's happening in Didcot or what we're seeing in Didcot?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's kind of aware of the challenges facing young people, which are among the kind of worst we've seen, really, when you compound the mental health crisis, really stretched education system, it's difficulty in catering for additional needs, and then the kind of long-term COVID impact and all these things that we are very familiar with. In Didcot, it does feel like it often kind of spills out into the street quite a bit, doesn't it, when you compound these problems. And so some of the problems affecting young people are quite visible, and whether that's kind of through antisocial behaviour, or I'm sure everyone kind of knows someone who knows someone who's got a young person who's in crisis, who's out of school, who's maybe attempted suicide or is caught up in the wrong crowd, or et cetera, et cetera. So, so the issues are quite visible, and even though Didcot doesn't have quite the community spirit of some of the other kind of surrounding communities, it does seem to have a kind of concern for the young people, and there are a lot of organisations, statutory and third sector and private sector as well, who have a real concern for that and want to do something about it. And so that's where I see the need and what's driven Didcot Wellbeing Web.
Yeah.
I also found, being quite new to the area as well, until in my first year, that there is so much in Didcot. There is so much charities, there's so much little businesses, all of that wanting to do their part for the community, which is so exciting to see, and it's quite a unique place to be. But actually, the Didcot Wellbeing Web identified, what if we drew everyone together? They're already making an impact in their little silos, but actually putting everything in one pot, how much of a bigger ripple effect in the community could we see? And it's sort of that possibility and that almost that hope as well, seeing that making of a difference, is also what's bringing people around the Didcot Wellbeing Web, and why we've got partners actually now approaching us to be part of it, because they're seeing that possibility of coming together and making a difference.
I remember right at the beginning as well, obviously we were having a lot of conversations about the theory of change and what we're actually trying to do, and I think one of the biggest themes that I pulled up on was the upstream downstream river of health analogy and model. I think there's so much funding going into that kind of crisis intervention point, which is needed, but there's also not enough funding going upstream, looking at, okay, so what are we actually doing as a community that causes the problem in the first place? And that can be on a micro level, or it could actually be looking at our community and holding ourselves accountable and be like, if we were to work together, we could do this a lot better, we could stop causing this problem. And I think, having that partnership will allow us to actually have those difficult conversations and stop doing things that are, keeping that kind of perpetual cycle going. Because otherwise, I think my opinion is that we'll have the same problems, but worse in the next 20 years with the next generation if we don't, it's that kind of saying, isn't it? If you carry on doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, you're insane. So it's like, how can we actually start to do things differently and challenge the status quo and look at actually this way of working doesn't work, and we need to look at stopping causing the problem in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I was really struck recently, I made a connection between, I've been volunteering at Train for a long time, and I realised that one of the young people who's kind of accessing our service is second generation Train user, and we worked with her mum kind of a generation ago.
That's
and so
amazing.
you really do start to, when you see that, you kind of start to think, right, what are those long term as you say, upstream measures we need to take to tackle some of the deep rooted challenges.
Because otherwise those cycles repeat, don't you? And you can see that through family dynamics where families are really struggling, and actually the patterns are repeating and people are still struggling, still living in poverty, So, that's amazing.
And that's why the Didcot Wellbeing Web is such a unique position, is because it's starting to shift that tide. And the fact is that we are still playing catch up from that COVID tsunami. And actually there is limited, as we've already said, there's limited funding and limited resources, and actually there's still a need for some of that resources to be at that crisis intervention to support those young people and those families and members of community at that point. So actually having a different model of working and putting funding bids in collaboratively to get a bigger funding pot to be able to make a bigger impact at that upstream, and just shifting how we do things can start meaning that we can start shifting that tide to the upstream and to make sustainable impact moving forward. But we had to think differently and uniquely to be able to fill that service gap with the limited resources that we have.
It is tricky, isn't it? I was thinking about as well, in terms of that sustainability, that's where those relationships are really important. But also naturally in the sector, people do kind of move on. So I'm wondering if that's a challenge, when there's a staff turnover, but you're trying to create really sustainable long-term relationships. Is that something that's been kind of tricky at all, or is it kind of, you've got good handovers with the partnership?
I think one of the other things that I've observed is that partnerships are most fragile when they're only happening at one level on the hierarchy of an organisation. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen it in organisations where you've got CEOs who are connecting really well, but there's kind of squabbling a bit further down and that's not quite working, or the inverse, where actually people at the grassroots are working kind of want to work together and it's not working at the top. And the key to resilience in some of those organisational relationships is actually cascading it kind of across the, throughout the hierarchy. Now, we're small organisations, we don't have giant hierarchies, but nonetheless, I think that principle still applies. That it's not just, about CEOs having a good working relationship, but throughout at every level. And it's certainly modelled at the top, and then an environment is created in which that collaboration is encouraged throughout. And I think that's where you get the kind of resilience, because then it's not hanging on one individual.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that, go ahead.
And that's why it's important that we've sort of embedded that cascading model within the Didcot Wellbeing Web. We have got CEOs around the table, but we've also got practitioners who are working on the ground, in the sense of that building that relationship and that resilience, but also making sure they have a voice directly from the people we're working with as well. Again, another layer of a uniqueness with this Didcot Wellbeing Web model.
Amazing. I guess that kind of leads us nicely on to the actual projects that you guys are working on as a partnership. I know there's the whole kind of next gen projects, and that includes Youth Voice, which I think is going to be, like you say, a really important layer within that partnership. So what are you guys doing as a partnership to meet all these needs?
So we've got the Next Gen project that has sort of 3 mini programs underneath it, which is really exciting, as we believe that when you're trying to improve mental health and wellbeing for young people, you can't just work with the young person in silo. You have to look at their entire environments, their parents, their carers, their teachers, their schools, their workplaces, everything, to be able to make a more sustainable impact. So one of our projects is Next Gen Parenting, and actually how can we support the parents working with the young people day in, day out, giving them strategies, tools and therapies to be able to help them support their young person to thrive in their environment, but also how can we support the parents to be able to thrive in theirs as well, and just building a bigger environment is really exciting. And those bilateral relationships from the Didcot Wellbeing Web has been able to mean that we can co-deliver and co-produce these projects. So for example, Tab and Sophia are running one starting next month, and we're drawing on their expertise, their funding. We're putting literally everything in this one pot to be able to deliver a service that is so needed, and there is a demand and an uptake already on that project. So it's really exciting to see. And then we've got this like next gen impact days. We did sort of like a pilot day last summer in August with Train. We had a group of young people come into Sophia using our space. We partnered with Sophia Nourish and Flourish program. We got them in the kitchen cooking and doing gym activities and games, and we just had really deep conversations. Some of my highlights was quote of the day, "I've never seen a pepper before." Like, that is just amazing. And they were able to experience different things that they don't normally experience. One of the other quotes is, "I like apricots, but they're a little bit too fuzzy. But I want to try more fruits." But actually,
that's so good.
So exciting, just to show them something different. And we were able to actually sit down at a table and eat. Some of these young people have never seen that modelled. They were able to take that home and be able to go, "Oh, let's sit down and eat together as a family." Just little things like that can really lighten up a day. This is in the school holidays, which is often some of the most isolating times for young people, where wellbeing and mental health issues spike, and actually filling in that gap where it's a free service for these young people just to come in and just be around community and friends is really great. And then you've got the next gen voices. If you're working with young people and for young people, they need to be part of the process all the way through. And the Didcot Wellbeing Web are really valuing that. Having young people from all walks of background and experiences, and making sure that they are placed on a platform to be able to share their voice in their way as well, and giving them the freedom to do that and be their authentic selves in that, so that we can stay relevant in our projects. Otherwise it goes top down. Actually, it needs to be bottom up as well, and that hybrid approach to be able to make a bigger impact for these young people. And that's really important for the community of Didcot.
Amazing. Sounds really exciting. So how are Train and Sophia collaborating in terms of projects that are kind of under that Didcot Wellbeing Web umbrella? Is there any kind of like projects that you guys are working on together?
I think the main one is the Next Gen Impact Day. It's working particularly with one of your practitioners, Georgie. She's working day in, day out with the young people and actually seeing those needs, and just coming together and putting our heads together. We've got this group of people, young people with these needs. How can we tailor a day to support them?
Amazing.
We've got another group. How can we tailor a day? And this is what's really exciting. It's very person-centred and young people-led. And that's why it's so important to have the voices of the young people and the practitioners to be able to make a really relevant project.
Yeah, and I guess part of that is our Social Action and Wellbeing Festival this summer, which we're really excited about. In fact, I don't think we've publicly announced it yet, so this might be the launch.
I love it. Sorry, I didn't mean to drop that in there. Let's do it. Let's launch it.
So that's really exciting. Yeah. So we're fortunate to have received some funding to put on a festival this summer. And we don't know what it's going to look like yet, because we're committed to this idea of young people are going to plan it, they're going to own it. So we've got some ideas and dreams kicking around, but it's over to the young people to kind of put that together. But an exciting event this summer, which we hope will have a massive impact, not just for young people kind of planning and leading it, but also, if the community can come together. We see new young people who really introduce to different ways that they can support their own kind of social, their own well-being. Almost, I guess, a bit like a social prescribing model. We're sort of envisaging that, as Alice said earlier, there's so many services and opportunities available for young people in Didcot. One of the big problems that we're facing, we've discussed at Wellbeing Web, is how on earth do we effectively signpost in this community? And this will be one element of that, where you'll hopefully have a whole range of organisations there able to showcase all the services they offer and how the community is putting together to try and support young people.
Be amazing. And because they've created it, like you say, it is that kind of bottom-up approach. They're going to want to be there. They're going to want to show all their friends and their family and be like, we did this. And that's for their sense of achievement and just the agency that they're going to get from that is going to be so cool. I can't wait to see it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, and maybe it will spark something for their future. Maybe they want to go into events managing or things, and that's what's so exciting. Just getting them exposing to different things and different experiences, and just igniting a passion in them. It's just really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Amazing. So I've got a couple more questions, but I'm really interested to hear where you think that the kind of partnership is going, or if there are any next steps that you wanted to highlight.
I think for me is just keeping doing what we're doing and really building those strong, resilient relationships between everyone in the community. For me, the next step is getting that youth voice really established. As we've already identified, that's a really important need to ensure that we stay relevant moving forward. So I think those are my two main things that I'd like to see the Didcot Wellbeing Web to do.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think for me, my hope would be that if over this coming year, because I do see these things really stepping up this year, that actually we continue to grow in the way that Alice just talked about, I think that then puts us in a position to have authority in speaking about this is what great collaboration looks like, and we can speak into other towns and communities, in the county and say, hey, look, this is a model that we're adopting here, and almost become as I say, an authority voice in that space, encouraging that. But I think also perhaps speaking into funders as well, and kind of saying, look, if you really want collaboration, this is some of the changes that might be required in terms of making that possible for organisations like ours, and then perhaps just having more people around the table as well, as kind of people see the impact and success of it and want to be part of it.
Amazing. Sounds really exciting. So just before we move on to my final question, if people are listening and want to support the partnership or the Didcot Wellbeing Web in any way, how can they support and how do they get in touch?
I think level of engagement can be from coming to every meeting and being thoroughly involved. It could be getting involved funding. It could be doing expertise, or you want to get involved in a particular project or anything. We just love people to get involved and to be able to come together and have the same passion and the same drive to make an impact. So I'd encourage you to reach out to myself, just have a little bit more an in-depth conversation, and let's start building that relationship, whatever that looks like, and let's make a difference together. Amazing,
that sounds great. And likewise, if people are listening and they want to get in touch with the individual organisations for kind of those specialists, I'll put all the links to our websites and stuff in the bio, and tag on social media so people can find us. So my final question, I'm really intrigued. You guys are both leaders and you're very good leaders. So I'm curious, if you could be any other leader or inspirational person, dead or alive, who would you be? I'll start with Alice.
That's a really difficult question because there's so many. One person who's really been inspirational in terms of my career journey and my personal journey is a lady called Catherine Booth. She was actually the co-founder of Salvation Army, and her resilience and her drive to set up a charity just to make a difference to the marginalised and to her community. And she just took a bit of an holistic approach of doing every corner of the community and actually seeing this organisation grow but still remain relevant as well, and have that sustainability and being that voice and never giving up. Sometimes working in community, working in partnerships, as we've already mentioned, comes with challenges, but actually she's been a real inspiration. If you keep going, you can make a difference, you can make a sustainable, long-lasting difference to a community and nationally as well, which is also really exciting.
Amazing. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, so probably the biggest influence on my leadership has been a Catholic priest called Richard Raw. He's a Franciscan, and I think he holds together really well the idea so he leads an organisation called the Centre for Action and Contemplation, and so he holds together that social action, but it coming from a place of actual kind of inner peace as well, and you kind of deal with yourself and your ego and stuff on the inside first, and that puts you in a position to then be able to kind of let that overflow and reach out to support communities and people around you. And so that's had a big influence on me, rather than kind of chasing success or money or whatever else, my career could have taken different turns, but instead by kind of letting go ego and pride, which are huge barriers to collaboration, right? Then it's actually, the ability, probably some of his teaching has given me the ability to, celebrate the success of so-called competitor organisations and stuff, and kind of let go of that pride. And that's smart.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for coming onto the podcast. It's been really lovely to talk to you both, and really exciting to hear about this really successful partnership. As we've highlighted, it is tricky, but it's really exciting. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing year. Now we're in 2025, and really looking forward to hearing more about the Social Action Festival in summer.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
A big thank you to Alice and Ben for coming onto the podcast today. If you would like to get involved in anything that we discussed, I'll pop the link in the description box. Please do like, share and subscribe. And if you want to support any of the work that SOFEA does, whether that be donation, volunteering or collaboration, please do visit our website www.sofea.uk.com.